Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha. We're starting a new book today. It's titled The Buddha's Way. This is volume 10 of our book series, and we're going to be exploring chapters 1 through 10 today. And the way that I do this program is I invite students who are in Zoom to be able to read one of the chapters. And then after they read the chapter, I will share some teachings on that. Then I will open up for any and all questions that you guys would like to ask. Whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you guys are all welcome to ask questions. You can put that into the comment section, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any and all questions that you like by just unmuting your microphone. And if there's anyone in Zoom who would like to volunteer to read, if you could electronically raise your hand as well, then I'll be able to call on you and you can unmute your microphone, and then you'll be able to read today's chapters, whatever chapter it is that you would like to volunteer for. It looks like Vibhav is volunteering for this first one. So if you'd like to go ahead, sir, you're welcome to read this first one.
Thank you. Chapter 1, Right and Wrong Refuge. They go to many a refuge, to mountains and forests, to parks and tree shrines, people threatened with danger. That's not the secure refuge, not the supreme refuge. That's not the refuge having gone to which you gain release from all discontentedness and stress. But when, having gone to the Buddha, the teachings and the community for refuge, you see with right wisdom the Four Noble Truths. Stress, the cause of stress, the transcending of stress, and the Noble Eightfold Path, the way to the stilling of stress. That's the secure refuge. That's the supreme refuge. That is the refuge having gone to which you gain release from all discontentedness and stress. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So essentially what the Buddha is saying here is like, okay, you can go to this, cabin in the woods, up in the mountains. You can go to the beach. You can go to a remote island. You can go to all these different places and think that maybe you're relieving stress, but that's not actually going to eliminate your stress. Those are just places that you're going to visit. The whole cause and the whole purpose, the whole reason why the mind is experiencing stress and anxiety and any other discontent feelings, it's all within the mind. So when you travel to that cabin in the woods, yeah, it's enjoyable. We can do those things. We have lots of fun doing those things, but that's not going to eliminate your discontentedness in the mind. That's not going to eliminate your stress. So in order to get to this point where the mind is protected, you need to be able to train the mind. So that's what it means to have a refuge. When the mind is in this refuge, it's protected. And having gotten to enlightenment, the mind will be fully protected. No matter what's going on in the world around you, you'll experience peace and joy. The mind will be completely stable and steady. It won't be shaken up with any sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All those feelings in others are completely eliminated. But it's not going to the mountains or the forests or the parks or tree shrines. It's not going to a remote island or a beach somewhere. Now, again, these places are definitely nice for us to visit, but we need to understand that that's not what's going to eliminate our stress. What the Buddha is saying is that if you go to the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, that's the refuge that's going to actually help you eliminate the stress. When he talks about going to the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, this is referred to as the triple gem, because you need these three things in order to be able to get to enlightenment. And you might not have these right off the beginning of your path to enlightenment, which is confidence in the Buddha, access to his teachings, and you need to be part of a community. So you guys may or may not have confidence in the Buddha, right? Depending on how far along you are in your journey on this path, you may even question whether this person even lived or not. The way that you gain confidence in the Buddha is through having access to his teachings. You examine and investigate those teachings. And when you investigate them, you independently verify them, whether they're true or they're false. You don't believe his teachings. Then you integrate them into your life in a practice that you train your mind through all the various tools and techniques that he shares. And as you're doing that, now the condition of your mind is gradually improving. And this is where you gain this confidence in the Buddha, confidence in his teachings, and then also being part of a community is going to be really helpful for you. Because being part of a community means being among other practitioners who are practicing these teachings. If you were just off by yourself somewhere, you wouldn't actually be able to get to enlightenment because you wouldn't have any role models to be able to observe how they practice. So when you're in a community, even an online community like this, or if you ever come together when we're in person, you get a chance to interact with people and see how they're practicing loving kindness and compassion, see how they're practicing generosity, see how they're practicing things like right speech and right action and things like this. This will help you to be able to model your practice, because there's plenty that you're going to learn through the discourses. There's plenty that you're going to learn from your teacher as they're pointing out things to you. There's plenty that you're going to learn in that way through all the different things that you're doing. But it's when you're around other people who are practicing the teachings, you'll be able to glean some insight about how they function in the world. And you can see, wow, I really like how Vibhav was so polite when he just read. And, I really like how this person maybe does this or does that. And you kind of observe that and you start incorporating some of that into your life. Because if you spend time around people who are hateful, who are gossiping and slandering, who are doing unwise things that are maybe unwholesome, your mind's going to be influenced in that direction. So that's why it's so important to cultivate relationships with people that are practicing these teachings, or people that maybe aren't necessarily practicing these teachings, but they are at least practicing good, wholesome moral conduct. Maybe they've learned that from other places. Maybe they've learned it from grandma or grandpa or mom or dad, or Christianity or Muslim teachings or Hindu teachings or Judaism or any of these other things, because they teach a certain amount of moral conduct there too. So you can spend time around people who are into wholesome things. And what the Buddha is saying is that the way to get to this protection, where the mind is protected, is you need to be able to see with right wisdom, the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is the very beginning of the path to enlightenment. You need to start there. That's where you can understand what is the problem in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. The Buddha here is using the word stress, because that's the actual problem, right? And there's all those other discontent feelings too. The cause of that is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. If the mind's getting what it wants, it gets those pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation. If the mind isn't getting what it wants, it gets those painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and a lot of others too. And one of those is stress. But then the Four Noble Truths also explains the elimination of that discontentedness, or the transcending of stress, how to get rid of it. If you eliminate the cause, which the cause is craving, desire, attachment, then the stress will be eliminated. So that's how you transcend the discontentedness or the stress, is you eliminate the craving, desire, attachment. And the way that you accomplish that is through the Noble Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in developing your mind. So say you're stressed at work. Some people think, oh, I'm so stressed at work, I need to go to this vacation in order to de-stress. Okay, well, maybe that's what you choose to do, but that's not going to fix the problem. Because the reason why you're stressed at work is not because of work. The mind is having certain cravings, desires, attachments at work. Maybe you're craving for more money. Maybe you're craving and longing and yearning for a promotion. Maybe you're craving to look good in front of other people. Maybe you're craving to impress your boss. Maybe you're craving to not work, and now all this work is coming to you, and now the mind is stressed because of all of these things. Maybe you're craving to talk with your friends and your coworkers and sit back and relax, but now when this work comes to you, your mind is not getting what it wants, which is to spend time with your friends, or to look good in front of the boss, or to get a promotion. So it's not the work itself that is causing the stress. It's the mind's longing, yearning, and craving for it, things to be a certain way. So to eliminate that, you need to be able to practice the Eightfold Path. That's the core central teaching that's going to guide you. And that's what the Buddha is saying here, is that's the secure refuge. That's the supreme refuge. Because once you eliminate craving, desire, attachment out of the mind's fully protected. There's nothing that can cause it to be discontent. So now the mind will release all of its discontentedness and stress, and the mind can be liberated. It can be free from the pollutions of mind. And the Eightfold Path and all the other teachings that the Buddha shares is going to guide you in that. But he's pointing students to this very first teaching, which is the Four Noble Truths, because that's how to get on the path. So this is the secure refuge. This is the right refuge. This is what's actually going to solve the problem, not the remote island, not the cabin in the woods. Although we might do those things from time to time, we just need to be clear and see truly that that's not what's going to solve the problem of the stress in the mind. So let me know what questions you guys have here. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. It looks like, Vibhav, you still have your hand up. Is that a question?
I guess I'll ask it. So this is like from the Dhammapada, so is there a reason you chose to put it in here? It's not the actual words, right?
Yeah, I don't consider the Dhammapada the actual words of the Buddha. The Dhammapada is a scholarly work where scholars have summarized the Buddha's words. But here, this one is actually telling you something that is meaningful and helpful. So that's why I put it in here, where sometimes the Dhammapada is much more poetic and it doesn't always give you something that you can independently verify because it's more like poetic in nature and you can't independently verify what's being taught. But in this situation, you can understand it because it's not like overly poetic and you can independently verify it through learning, reflecting, and practicing. So that's why it's in here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Let me see if we have any other questions anywhere. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So let's go to chapter 2. Anybody would like to read this one? Okay, it looks like Robert. Go ahead, sir.
Sure. Beings are few who are reborn among human beings or heavenly beings because they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. Then the perfectly enlightened one took up a little bit of soil in his fingernail and addressed the monks thus: "What do you think, monks? Which is more, the little bit of soil in my fingernail or the great earth?" "Venerable sir, the great earth is more. The little bit of soil in that perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is insignificant compared to the great earth. That little bit of soil is not calculable, does not bear comparison, does not amount even to a fraction. So too, monks, those beings are few who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn among human beings. But those beings are more numerous who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn in hell, in the animal realm, in the realm of afflicted spirits. For what reason? Because, monks, they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. What for? The noble truth of discontentedness, the noble truth of the cause of discontentedness, the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness, the noble truth of the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand this is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. What do you think, monks? Which is more, the little bit of soil in my fingernail or the great earth?" "Venerable sir, the great earth is more. The little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is insignificant. Compared to the great earth, the little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is not calculable, does not bear comparison, does not even amount to a fraction. So too, monks, those beings are few who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn among the heavenly beings. But those beings are more numerous who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn in hell, in the animal realm, in the realm of afflicted spirits. For what reason? Because, monks, they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. What for? The noble truth of discontentedness, the noble truth of the cause of discontentedness, the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness, the noble truth of the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand this is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness."
All right. Thank you, Robert. So as you guys have most likely heard me share many times, if you've been studying with me for any amount of time, is that all the teachings of the Buddha are independently verifiable, that even the 5 realms of existence of hell, animal, afflicted spirit, human realm, the heavenly realm, the cycle of rebirth, all these things are independently verifiable. You may or may not have evidence of that right now, but when we get to volume 11, chapter 105, which is going to be coming up in a matter of weeks, because we're going to be moving into that volume, maybe more like months, because by the time we get to 105, but nonetheless, we're going to be getting to that where you can cultivate the wisdom of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. There's 17 different criteria that I lay out to help you be able to independently verify that. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence of that, other than that you can't remember your previous lives right now. But the Buddha taught the way the world is. He didn't teach the way the world should be. And it's important to know the way the world is, because as you understand the way the world is, you can navigate the world peacefully with a steady and stable mind. But when you lack wisdom of the natural laws and the way the world is, you will struggle and have difficulties. That's what the anger, the stress, the anxiety, the frustration, that's all an indication to you that you're living in a world that you don't understand. And as you're starting to train your mind and you're lifting this pollution out of the mind, it's not uncommon for somebody to observe their past lives and be able to see their past lives. Well, if you started having vivid memories of being murdered and you didn't know that that was in your previous life, that could really shake you up. Right? So if you understand that, oh, those are past life memories, you can just set them aside and no worries, right? Or if you started to see beings from the hell realm or the afflicted spirit realm or the heavenly realm, these are formless beings, but some people can actually see them. And if you understand that's the way the world is, it could really shake you up. Or if you started having communication from beings from these other realms, because we're all in the same time and space, that it's not like hell is deep down in the earth and heaven is way far up in the sky. We're all in the same time and space, and there's a potential for you to not only see these beings, but also hear them too. And just like you're in a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody could be talking and you can ignore those human beings. It's the same thing when you hear these beings from other realms as well. You can just choose to ignore it if you understand what that is. But if you didn't understand, you could maybe think you're going crazy. So the Buddha teaches the cycle of rebirth and these 5 realms for a reason, because it's the truth, and you might end up experiencing interaction in these kinds of ways that I just described. And if you understand that this is the truth, it won't shake you up when you're experiencing those kinds of things. And ultimately, you can independently verify these things through your practice if you decide that you would like to do that. So what he's doing here is he's saying, hey, this whole cycle of rebirth, there's not very many beings that are reborn into the human realm or into the heavenly realm. None of these realms are actually permanent. You can understand through the universal truth of impermanence that beings are moving in and out of these realms at all times. So heaven is not a permanent existence. Hell is not a permanent existence. There's no being who's sending you to those places. It's your own decisions that are leading you to that place. And when you're there, it's not a permanent existence. So if you're practicing and you're training your mind and it's becoming more and more wholesome, then you'll be able to see that as you journey in life, you'll be able to become more peaceful, more joyful, more harmonious with people around you, because you're training your mind and you're uprooting the pollution of mind. But if you're not doing that, your mind's becoming more and more unwholesome, you're being bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive and resentful with people around you, there's the potential for you to be reborn into these other realms, particularly the lower realms. So the Buddha is saying, hey, rebirth in the human realm and heavenly realm is very rare, essentially. So not only do you understand from this particular discourse that it's the Four Noble Truths that's going to help you to be able to get on the path, purify your mind, and become more wholesome, so that way you won't be reborn into these lower realms, but also it's helping you to understand that this life that you have, don't allow it to go to waste. Don't be complacent. It's really rare for somebody to get into this human existence. And now that you're here, don't allow it to go to waste. You can learn and grow and develop and practice and train your mind. And the beauty about the teachings of the Buddha is that you can see right now in this life that the condition of the mind is gradually improving. Where a lot of times it's believe, and hope something good happens when you die. Well, at that point, it's too late. So the Buddha's teachings are giving you tangible evidence in this life that the condition of your mind in your life are improving as your mind's awakening to these natural laws. So you've got lots of different things here. Even though this discourse is very simple, if you peer into it, you can glean all this different benefit that I just described, that you can ensure that you're not being complacent in your current life. You can understand that it's very few beings that are reborn into the human realm or into the heavenly realm. And the way that all this is occurring is through one's own mind. It's the condition of your mind at the time of death that decides what happens next. If an individual is enlightened by the time that they die, the Buddha doesn't declare what comes next. It's an undeclared teaching. This path isn't about an afterlife. This path is about getting to a wonderful and ideal life now in this existence. He does teach that if you don't get to enlightenment, there is rebirth, and that's something that you'll see all throughout his teachings. But in order to ensure that you have either an improved rebirth or that your mind is enlightened by the time you get to death, what he's saying is make an effort to understand the Four Noble Truths, because that's the very first, very beginning teaching that someone would need to know. And here, this is just kind of a summary version of the Four Noble Truths. When I teach it in all the foundational classes, you can understand the Four Noble Truths as I walk you through in a way that you can independently verify, so that way you can have a breakthrough to understanding what is the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this discourse. This is Volume 10, Chapter 2. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So now let's go to the next one. By the way, for those of you guys that may be tuning in for the first time, you've got the words of the Buddha. You've got the reference here that is going to take you back to the original Pali Canon, if you'd like to look this up so you can have confidence that it came from the original Pali Canon. Then you've got texts from me that are helping you to understand how to integrate this into your life. Because the Buddha taught very clear, very concise, and very precise, but it helps to have a dedicated practitioner and dedicated teacher to help you understand the totality of the teachings, because oftentimes there's connected teachings that plug into any one particular teaching. So what I've done here is giving you guidance about understanding how to integrate this into your life, and then also how to connect other teachings that go into this that you may not be aware of. Is there anybody who would like to read Chapter 3? Okay, it looks like Leo and Samantha. So Samantha, we'll come to you next for the next one, because it looks like Leo had his hand up first.
Noble truth is not impossible to know. The noble ones are plenty. There are not only 100 Vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more male ordained practitioners, my disciples, who by realizing for themselves with direct knowledge, there and now enter upon the reside in the liberation of mind and liberation by wisdom, that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. There are not only 100 Vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more female ordained practitioners, my disciples, who by realizing for themselves with direct knowledge, here and now enter upon and reside in the liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. There are not only 100 Vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more male household practitioners, my disciples, clothed in white, leading lives of celibacy, who, with the destruction of the 5 lower feathers, will reappear spontaneously in the heavenly realm and there attain final nibbana, without ever returning from that world. There are not only 100 Vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more male household practitioners, my disciples, clothed in white, enjoying sensual pleasure, who carry out my instruction, respond to my advice, have gone beyond doubt, become free from confusion, gained courage, and become independent of others in the teacher's teachings. There are not only 100 Vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more female household practitioners, my disciples, clothed in white, leading lives of celibacy, who, with the destruction of the 5 lower feathers, will reappear spontaneously in the heavenly realm and there attain final nibbana, without ever returning from that world. There are not only 100 Vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more female household practitioners, my disciples, clothed in white, enjoying sensual pleasure, who carry out my instruction, respond to my advice, have gone beyond doubt, become free of confusion, gain courage, and become independent of others in the teacher's teachings.
Okay, thank you, Leo. So here we get a bunch of insight from this particular discourse. First of all, there's just thousands of people studying with the Buddha by the time he's talking here, right? Because he's already talking more than 500 male ordained practitioners, more than 500 female, and then households. So there's just thousands and thousands of people studying with the Buddha at this point. And what he's saying is that it's possible for individuals to be able to learn and understand his teachings, because there's going to be some people who understand these teachings and there's going to be some people who don't. That's the universal truth of impermanence. You can have people come into a class and they're understanding, they're absorbing the teachings, they're making sense to them, they're seeing how to implement them into their day-to-day life. But then you can have other people that it just really doesn't connect with their mind. They're just not understanding what it is that the Buddha taught. And the more effort we put in, the more dedicated, the more diligent we are, we can make efforts to be able to understand his teachings, because I can assure you that they lead exactly where he said they do. They lead to this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state. So here we get the picture of all these different people that are actually studying with the Buddha and actually making their way to enlightenment. This first paragraph, he's talking about male ordained practitioners that are making their way to enlightenment and actually enlightened. And then the second paragraph, he's talking about female ordained practitioners who are actually getting to enlightenment. And this makes this particular discourse even extra special, because there's some people in the world that will tell you that females are unable to get to enlightenment. And this just isn't true. And you can see this in the words of the Buddha here, that he's talking about female ordained practitioners who are getting to enlightenment. He's saying that they reside in the liberation of mind and liberation by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. What you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're eliminating pollution of the mind. That's the destruction of the taints or the pollutions or the fetters. So anybody who's destroyed the taints or their mind is taintless, they are enlightened. Anybody who has liberation of mind, they are enlightened. So here we can see that females were absolutely getting to enlightenment during the lifetime of the Buddha, and there's females now that are enlightened. So if you ever hear anybody that says a female can't get to enlightenment, you can just understand that they've misunderstood the teachings of the Buddha, and you can ignore whatever it is that they're sharing. And the Buddha gives you this advice. He says that anytime you hear anybody speaking about his teachings, if it conflicts with what he actually taught in his discourses within his own words, that you can just consider that that person has misunderstood his teachings and ignore that individual's teachings. Because here you can see it for yourself. And I'm sure there's probably people somewhere in this world that will tell you that people who prefer same-gender relationships can't get to enlightenment, or that transgender individuals can't get to enlightenment. And this just isn't true. Anybody and everybody can get to enlightenment if they're able to intellectually learn and process that information, and they're able to improve their decision making through making wiser and wiser decisions in their moral conduct and purifying their mind. They can get to enlightenment. Of course, there's going to be individuals in this life that maybe their mind isn't able to absorb information. Maybe there's some type of medical issue that is challenging their brain or maybe their mind. Maybe they've had some kind of a traumatic injury, and these individuals may not be able to actually intellectually learn in a way that are able to get to enlightenment during this life. But you can also get to enlightenment at death as well. That's a potential as well. So when you hear things from people that say otherwise than what the Buddha shares, it's important to understand that they've misunderstood. There's also individuals that will tell you that household practitioners can't get to enlightenment. And this is also untrue. Here, the Buddha isn't talking about household practitioners getting to enlightenment, but he is talking about household practitioners getting to the third stage of enlightenment. Because what he's talking about here, where an individual has removed the 5 lower fetters and they're going to be reborn in the heavenly realm, that's the third stage of enlightenment. So household practitioners can get to enlightenment, and they did get to enlightenment during the lifetime of the Buddha, but it was much more rare. And the reason why is because household practitioners were more involved with day-to-day activities just to sustain their life. That 2,500 years ago, for example, just to get water into your house was like an all-day affair. And you probably had to do that 2 or 3 times a week, right? We had to carry buckets from our house to the well, fill those buckets up, carry them back to our house, dump them in a trough, go back to the well, carry that water, right? Fill up the water, carry that water, dump it, right? So we had to do that 2 or 3 times a week, and it might have taken us a half a day or a full day just to get water at our house. We don't have that anymore. We can just walk over to a faucet in a lot of places and turn a spigot, and boom, we have water. Just to get food 2,500 years ago, you had to buy seeds, you had to put them in the ground, you had to nurture them, you had to take care of them, you had to take care of the plant, you had to harvest the plant, you had to bring the food into the house, you had to cut it up, make it, cook it. It was a lot more effort. Today, if we would like food, we can just go right outside to a store and we can have food in the snap of a finger. So there's been a lot of modern conveniences that actually make now even a better time as a household practitioner to get to enlightenment than even during the lifetime of the Buddha. Because in order for you to get to enlightenment, the teachings really need to be shining in the world. And as you heard previously, you need to have confidence in the Buddha, access to his teachings, and be part of a community. And you have all those things, and the teachings are shining in the world. In fact, we have so much time now that we tend to fill it up with unbeneficial things. Sometimes we fill up our day with maybe social media or watching YouTube videos or other unbeneficial things. Now, we can surely do those things because everything can be done in moderation. But if we spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, doing these kinds of things, it really eats up the time that we could be meditating or reading books or coming to classes, watching videos or podcasts, getting help from a teacher. So if you start scaling those things back, you actually see that you have a lot more time in your day than you actually realize to be able to read, to be able to meditate, to be able to come to classes and things like this, even more so than during the lifetime of the Buddha. So in this particular discourse, he's not talking about household practitioners getting to enlightenment, but there's other places where he is talking about that. So you can understand that household practitioners are able to get to enlightenment. It's just that right here, he's not talking about that. So this is a really interesting discourse for all these reasons, because it can dispel the myth that women can't get to enlightenment. And it can help you to understand just the totality of how many people were actually studying with the Buddha, and that it's possible for people to actually learn and grow and develop on the path. Because one of the things that the mind does is it kind of gets complacent. When you first get exposure to the teachings, sometimes people are very complacent. They're not interested in actually diving into them. Or, maybe they just kind of disregard the teachings, or maybe their mind finds justification of why, they don't need to learn and practice. But if you see what the Buddha is sharing with you is, hey, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people 2,500 years ago that understood his teachings, surely you can understand them today and be able to get to enlightenment as well. So let me know what questions you guys have. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Samantha might have a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, I'm just wondering about the phrase becoming independent of others in the teacher's teachings. Does that mean they were following other teachers? Yes, that would be one of them.
Yeah.
Or that they don't need any other teachings other than the Buddha's.
Yeah, what he's talking about here is that you're not conforming to what other people do. Because in a society of a bunch of unenlightened beings, which we live in that society, oftentimes what the unenlightened mind does is it just conforms to what other people are doing around you. If people are using profanity, maybe you start using profanity. Or maybe if somebody is drinking or using drugs, using alcohol, maybe someone has a tendency to do those kinds of things. If someone's gossiping or slandering, maybe you're more likely to do those things. But when you know what's wise and unwise, when you've trained in the teachings and you know the natural law of karma and you know that these things are going to cause you harm, you know what's wise and unwise, and you're independent of other people because you're now practicing the teachings. And now you understand that it's wise for you to do that regardless of what other people are choosing to do.
Okay, thank you.
And you're going to see another discourse about this here in a moment in that kind of same area. All right, looks like Denise has a question. Go ahead, ma'am. Just need to unmute yourself there. There you go.
Oh, thanks, David. Thank you very much for the class. I just have a question with regard to the 5 fetters. I'm sorry, I don't understand it. Would you mind explaining it a little bit for me again, please?
Sure. There's 10 individual fetters that the Buddha discovered. These are the 10 pollutions, and they're referred to as fetters because during his lifetime, if you were a criminal, they would attach a fetter to your ankle to keep you confined in a certain area. What a fetter is a shackle and a chain and a ball, and it keeps you trapped in a particular area, like a field. They would just keep you turned out in a field, where today we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells, where back then they would just attach a fetter to your ankle. So when the Buddha discovers these 10 individual fetters, or these 10 individual pollutions, he refers to them as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state. So what this path is all about is purifying the mind of these fetters. So the first 5 fetters are things like personal existence view, which you probably don't know what that is right off the bat, but I teach that. There's something called doubt, wrong behavior and observances, sensual desire. There is ill will, which is like anger, hatred, ill will. Then when you go up into the higher fetters, there's desire for form and formless, which you don't know what those are right now. There's conceit, which you probably know what that is, like arrogance, pride, measuring and comparing yourself, putting yourself above or below people, judging other people. There's restlessness, which is like overactivity in the mind, anxiety. And then there's something called ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. So these individual fetters are things that I introduce students to in all the foundational classes. And then as you go in your journey, you learn more and more about these fetters in the various courses and retreats that I share. Okay. All right. If you'd like to know more detail at this point, Denise, what you might decide to do is Volume 1, Chapter 3. You'll see a summary in there of the 10 fetters. And you can get this book from our website by just downloading it for free. You can take it and go print it. Amazon has it. And then here at the temple, we have them as well, just reimbursing us for our printing costs. So Volume 1, Chapter 3 has a summary of the 10 fetters. And then you'll learn them as you go in all the different classes and courses and stuff like that. Okay, let me check Facebook and YouTube. I don't see any questions there. So Samantha, I think you were volunteering to read a chapter. So if you'd like to read this next one.
Thank you. With the teachings and yourselves as your refuge. But have I not already declared, Ananda, that we must be parted, separated, and severed from all who are dear and agreeable to us? How, Ananda, is it to be obtained here? May what is born come to be, conditioned, and subject to disintegration, not disintegrate. That is impossible. It is just as if the largest branch would break off a great tree standing possessed of heartwood. So too, Ananda, is the great monk community standing possessed of heartwood. Sariputta has attained final nibbana. How, Ananda, is it to be obtained here? May what is born come to be, conditioned, and subject to disintegration, not disintegrate. That is impossible. Therefore, Ananda, reside with yourselves as your own island, with yourselves as your own refuge, with no other refuge. Reside with the teachings as your island, with the teachings as your refuge, with no other refuge. And how, Ananda, does a monk reside with himself as his own island, with himself as his own refuge, with no other refuge? With the teachings as his island, with the teachings as his refuge, with no other refuge. Here, Ananda, a monk resides reflecting on the body as body, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, mind as mind, mental objects as mental objects. Dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. Those monks, Ananda, either now or after I am gone, who reside with themselves as their own island, and with themselves as their own refuge, with no other refuge, who reside with the teachings as their island, with the teachings as their refuge, with no other refuge. It is these monks, Ananda, who will be for me topmost of those determined on the training.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So the overall theme here with this particular discourse is, like we were talking about just earlier, is like, don't follow other people, because you're going to be around other people, whether it's at work or, other places where they're going to be gossiping and slandering. But that doesn't mean you need to do that, right? If they're gossiping and slandering, that harms them, but you don't have to do that. In fact, you can just sit there and be quiet. You can get up and leave. You can do whatever you like. Or if other people are using profanity or other things like this, right? You don't have to do those things. If someone's using drugs or alcohol, I would recommend you leave, because those kinds of people usually aren't going to be making wise decisions. Once we start getting intoxicated, we start to make really unwise decisions. So being around intoxicated people, it's typically wise to just kind of move away from that. So the Buddha's talking overall, the theme is that you need to really make your own decisions and know what's wise and unwise. But more so on this particular discourse, what was happening is one of the Buddha's close students, Sariputta, had died. And Ananda, having been with the Buddha for so long, he was with the Buddha from the very beginning all the way until the Buddha died. And he never attained enlightenment during the lifetime of a Buddha, because every person that studies with a Buddha isn't going to get to enlightenment. He did get to enlightenment shortly after the Buddha's death, but during the lifetime of the Buddha, he didn't get to enlightenment. And he tended to be attached to people, because you can see in the discourses where he was attached to the Buddha. In this discourse, prior to this, he was also attached to Sariputta. And the Buddha was explaining to him, like, hey, haven't I explained to you that everybody is impermanent, that everything around you is impermanent, that all conditioned objects are impermanent? He's kind of like helping him to see impermanence here. And what he's saying is, okay, reside with yourself as your own island. Yourself is your own refuge, that protection. No other refuge, right? Essentially, you need to have the wisdom to know what is wise and unwise in the world, not relying on the people around you. Because as you're becoming wiser and wiser, you're going to see that more and more people are making such unwise decisions, and you need to be able to do that without judgment of other people. But you just understand that they're making these unwise decisions, and that doesn't mean you need to make those same decisions. So that's part of residing with yourself as your own island. But what the Buddha is talking about specifically about residing with yourself as your own island is practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is a real catalyst or linchpin in your development on the path to enlightenment. By practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, it's going to really help you move your mind into the enlightened mental state. And just as a recap, for those of you guys that maybe have studied this before, maybe some people that haven't studied the 4 foundations of mindfulness with me at all, that there's having awareness of the bodily sensations that are arising as part of discontentedness starting to occur in the mind, that the feeling hasn't occurred yet, but there's this tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is to have awareness of that. So if you're reflecting on body as body, it means that you're aware when those bodily sensations are starting to arise, because that's the early warning system alerting you that your mind's about to become discontent. And that's where you'd like to cut off and let go. And if you can cut off and let go there every single time, you're about 1 to 3 years away from enlightenment at that point. So if you don't catch it as a bodily sensation, it's then going to become a feeling. Now the mind's angry. Now the mind's frustrated. So you're not suppressing your feelings by cutting off at the bodily sensations. You're actually cutting it off before it becomes a feeling. You're not even allowing it to become a feeling. It's like preventing the water from ever coming into the boat. But if you miss it as a bodily sensation, you would like to cut it off as a feeling. Like now the mind's angry. Now the mind's sad. Now the mind's frustrated. Cut it off and let it go. Even the conditioned pleasant feelings, you need to be willing to cut those off too, because you need to get to the unconditioned joy, the unconditioned happiness, where there's no condition that is causing it. But if you hold on to this temporary conditional happiness, meaning that there's some condition that is met, then you will be happy, then you're not going to actually get to enlightenment. So you need to be willing to cut off and let go. Even those bodily sensations that are associated with the painful feelings, there's some associated with the pleasant ones too, like tingling across the shoulders, up the back of the neck, over the head. So if you can cut that stuff off at the bodily sensations, it's essentially rewiring the mind to not form a conditioned feeling. That would be ideal. But if it does become a feeling, either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, you can cut it off and let it go there too. Because if you don't, it's going to affect the condition of the mind. That's reflecting on mind as mind. The condition of the mind is like for a few minutes, few hours, few days, your mind's grumpy and irritable. This is like, I'm sure you've experienced this where you're kind of agitated. There was something that happened 3, 4, 5, 6 days ago, but you're still kind of generally grumpy and agitated about it. You would like to catch that sooner and sooner. If you allow the mind to dwell in that, you're allowing your mind to stay wired that way, and it's going to keep doing that over and over and over again. So you're trying to break that up and transform the mind, catching it as a bodily sensation so that the mind isn't allowed to form that conditioned feeling. But if you don't catch it as a bodily sensation, you don't catch it as a feeling, you don't catch it as a condition of the mind, it's going to feed these mental objects, which are deeply rooted containers in the mind, such as the 10 fetters that we were just talking about. Those are the mental objects that the Buddha is referring to with the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Things like sensual desire and ill will, things like conceit and things of that nature. So you're trying to catch it as soon as possible and cut it off and let it go. And that's what it means to reside with yourself as your own island. That you don't need other people to tell you, like, hey, calm down, or hey, you're getting too upset here, or hey, you need to do this, or no, you don't need to do that. If you're practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness and you're aware of your mind, you're going to notice the feelings arising as a bodily sensation, and you can cut it off and let it go. And what helps you to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness is breathing mindfulness meditation. That's why it's so important that you practice that daily, because as you're practicing that daily, you'll get more and more awareness of the mind, and you'll be able to reside with yourself as your own island. So if you're walking down the street and you're noticing a conceited thought that comes up, or you're starting to judge somebody else, you'd like to cut that off and let it go. If you're in your car and somebody cuts you off in traffic and you're noticing anger starting to arise, you would like to cut that off and let it go. If you're at work and you have the overwhelming urge to punch your boss in the face, cut that off and let it go. It's not going to produce anything beneficial, right? So you like to be observant of the mind and then cut off and let go anytime these unwholesome things are arising. And that's residing with yourself as your own island. And that's what's going to ultimately help you to get to enlightenment. That's why the Buddha's highlighting it here, because it's so important to develop those 4 foundations of mindfulness. So you need to know what those are, and then you need to develop them within your mind so that you can have awareness of all 4 of those things: the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. And you may not know what all those things are right now, and that's where you would like to grow and develop to be able to understand those things. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and let me know you have a question. Okay, it looks like we have some questions coming in here on Facebook. Starts with Amina. Hello, when reflecting on the body as the body, when the body is in a state of pain for several days due to injury, how does one best focus on healing and not laminate in the mind, feeling attached to craving for wanting to be in permanent good health? You were recently in an accident and your body was in pain, so interested in your guidance for others in a similar situation. Thank you, dear teacher. Okay, and then she has PS. So in times when the bodily sensations are painful, how to keep the mind calm at those times? Okay, so the body is body that we were just talking about with the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Those are unique bodily sensations. What the Buddha is talking about there is the bodily sensations associated with a craving, desire, attachment that's been triggered. So when you have contact through your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind itself, if you have a craving, desire, attachment in your mind, it will trigger that. It will trigger that central desire, and that's where the mind's going to start wanting to form a conditioned feeling. Either a pleasant feeling, a painful one, or a neither painful nor pleasant. So the bodily sensations that he's talking about there are related to the arising of discontentedness based on the craving, desire, attachment. And that's what you'd like to cut off and let go. Now, when it comes to bodily pain, like you've stumped your toe or have a motorbike accident or things like this, it's always important to remind yourself this is impermanent. And what the mind will do if it's untrained is when you experience bodily pain, it's going to crave permanent comfort of the body. And not only are you going to experience the bodily pain, you're going to experience the mental anguish that goes along with it. But if you can remind yourself that what just occurred is impermanent, then you can get to a point where your mind doesn't crave permanent comfort. And instead of experiencing the bodily pain and the mental anguish, you'll only experience the bodily pain. And this will kind of mute the overall pain that you experience. Because the vast majority of the pain that you experience when there's an issue with the body is its mental anguish, because the mind is craving that permanent comfort. So you need to be able to see that your body is not going to be permanently comfortable. So whether it's you stumping your toe or you get a paper cut, whatever it is, you just need to always remind yourself that these things are impermanent. So that way you can reside peaceful and joyful. And even in a situation like the motorbike accident I had, I was in pain for 2 months, not the same degree of pain, but, for 2 months there was bodily pain. So in those situations, you just remind yourself that, hey, this is impermanent. And now let me make some wise decisions to get this body back to health as soon as possible. So one of the things that I did is I did some stretching, because I knew from a previous accident that if I stayed cooped up in the bed, the muscles would stay tight. So I started moving around and stretching right from the beginning. I started, making sure I was eating good, healthy food. I was sleeping in a more comfortable place, a more comfortable location. I changed my bodily movements and things like this. So these are things that you can do, is look for wise decision making, whether it's medicine, whether it's seeing a doctor, whether it's food intake, water intake, exercise, whatever it is. You would like to put wise decisions behind getting this body back to health. Because while the body being permanently healthy is not permanent, right? It's not possible for the body to be permanently healthy. This unhealthy state, that's not permanent either. So let's make it as impermanent as possible by putting a whole bunch of wise decisions behind it so that we can get the body back to health as soon as possible. Looks like Janae has a question. She says, why do feelings start in the body and not the mind itself? So the mind itself has the craving, and that's what's triggered, right? But now there's that early warning system that we have. And this is the beauty of this, because if the feeling actually started in the mind, you would never be able to get to enlightenment. Because as long as you keep allowing the mind to form the feeling, it's going to stay wired that way. That's why we have this early warning system of the bodily sensations, so that you can revert that, you can counteract that, you can transform that. Because what the bodily sensations are doing for you is it's saying, hey, girl, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling here. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And you're like, nope, not going to let you do that. That's what your mind's telling you with those bodily sensations. So you're noticing those bodily sensations. You're like, nope, not going to let you do that. Because if you allow it to get to the next part, which is the feeling, boom, your mind just stayed wired to form those conditioned feelings. So you will never transform your mind if you keep allowing that to occur. But of course, you are going to have some conditioned feelings between now and enlightenment. It's going to take you some time. Even when you're in the third stage of enlightenment, you're going to still have some infrequent situations and very insignificant situations where your mind's still forming some conditioned feelings, but they're very minor and very insignificant, and they're very spread out, very infrequent. But it's still going to happen. So each time that you're noticing the bodily sensations, just get better and better at noticing it and cutting it off sooner and sooner. That's what you're doing in the meditation, is you're noticing when the mind moves off the breath sooner and sooner, and you're cutting it off easier and easier. And then when you're doing that training in your meditation, now in your day-to-day life, you can do that as well. So thank goodness that we do have this, because then we can actually get to enlightenment. Because if it started in the mind as a feeling, then the mind would just stay wired that way, and you would never be able to change it. It would be a permanent state. Okay, let me see if we have anything else. I don't see anything else. So let's go to the next chapter. Would somebody like to read this one? This is chapter 5. Okay, looks like Denise is going to read. Go ahead, ma'am. And then we'll go to Leo after that.
Thank you. Liberation of mind is the heartwood. So this holy life, monks, does not have gain, honor, and praise for its benefit, or the attainment of virtue for its benefit, or the attainment of concentration for its benefit, or wisdom and vision for its benefit. But it is this unshakable liberation of mind that is the goal of this holy life, its heartwood, and its end. Suppose a man needing heartwood, seeking heartwood, wandering in search of heartwood, came to a great tree standing possessed of heartwood, and cutting off on these heartwood, he would take it away knowing it was heartwood. Then a man with good sight, seeing him, might say, this good man knew the heartwood, the sapwood, the inner bark, the outer bark, and the twigs and leaves. Thus, while needing heartwood, seeking heartwood, wandering in search of heartwood, he came to a great tree standing possessed of heartwood, and cutting off only its heartwood, he took it away, knowing it was heartwood. Whatever it was, this good man had to make with heartwood, his purpose will be served.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here, what the Buddha is saying is about this path to enlightenment. There's only one goal, and that is to get to enlightenment. That is to get to liberation, where the mind is no longer experiencing any discontentedness. Sometimes people put a lot of emphasis on other things like concentration and the meditation and all these things. And of course, these are all qualities that you develop on your journey to enlightenment, but you need to always keep in mind what is the true goal. It isn't to have this gain honor and praise, right? That's like getting other people to admire you, like, wow, they're practicing the Buddha's teachings. Look at them. They're so smart. They're so intelligent. Wow, that person's so calm. Look at them. They're so loving and kind. No, it's not about getting gain honor and praise from other people, right? And it's not just about improving your moral conduct, because that's part of what you're doing too, is you need to improve your moral conduct. But it's not just about that. And it's not about attaining concentration, which of course you're going to get plenty of concentration on your journey to enlightenment. And it's not just about wisdom and vision. When the Buddha's talking about wisdom, he's talking about knowing the truth of the natural laws. But when he's talking about vision, he's talking about being able to see those natural laws very clearly and how to actually navigate the mind to enlightenment. So while these are all things that you actually need in order to be able to get to enlightenment, among others, the ultimate goal is to be able to get to enlightenment itself. When he says it's the heartwood, what heartwood is the core of the tree. It's the highest quality of the tree. There's different parts of the tree, and in the core of the tree, that's the real high quality wood. So if you're doing like a high-end sculpture or some high-end utensil or tool or some high-end furniture or something like this, then people usually are looking for the hardwood because that's what's going to produce the very best product. So he's saying this is the hardwood of this path. All these other things might be known. You might know the leaves and the twigs and the outer bark, inner bark, the sapwood, and all these other things. You might know all these other things about the path to enlightenment, but the real goal of it is to actually get to enlightenment itself. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions anywhere, so we'll go to the next one. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Oh, it's Leo. It's supposed to be Leo. Go ahead, sir.
You. Anyone can produce Nibbana. And what Ananda are the 6 classes? First, here, someone of the black class produces a black state. Second, someone of the black class produces a white state. Third, someone of the black class produces Nibbana, which is neither black nor white. 4. Then someone of the white class produces a black state. 5. Someone of the white class produces a white state. 6. And someone of the white class produces Nibbana, which is neither black nor white. First, and how is it, Ananda, that someone of a black class produces a black state? Here someone has been born in a low family of Kandalas, hunters, bamboo workers, cart markers, or flower scavengers. One that is poor, with little food and drink, that subsists with difficulty, where food and clothing are obtained with difficulty. And he is ugly, unsightly, ill proportioned, with much illness, blind, crippled, lame, or paralyzed. He does not obtain food, drink, clothing, and vehicles, garlands, skins, and ointments, bedding, housing, and lighting. He engaged in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. In consequences with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in the plane of misery, in a bad destination, in the lower world, in hell. It is in such a way that someone of the black class produces a black state. Second, and how is it, Ananda, that someone of the black class produces a white state? Here, someone has been reborn in a low family of Kandalas, hunters, bamboo workers, cart makers, flower scavengers. One that is poor, with little food and drink, that subsists with difficulty, where food and clothing are obtained with difficulty. And he is ugly, unsightly, ill-proportioned, with much illness, blind, crippled, lame, or paralyzed. He does not obtain food, drink, clothing, and vehicles, garments, skins, and ornaments, bedding, housing, and lighting. He engages in wholesome conduct by his body, speech, and mind. In consequence, with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world. It is in such a way that someone of the black class produces a white state. Third, and how is it, Ananda, that someone of the black class produces Nibbana, which is neither black nor white?
I think
Here,
you can
someone
skip
has
over
been-
that, Leo. I think you can go right here because we've read that already a couple times.
Having shaved off his hair and beard, he puts on ochre robes and goes forth from the household life into homelessness. When he has thus gone forth, he abandons the 5 hindrances, defilements of the mind, things that weaken wisdom. And then with his mind well established in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, he correctly develops 7 factors of enlightenment and produces enlightenment, which is neither black nor white. It is in such a way that someone of the black class produces Nibbana, which is neither black nor white. Fourth, and how is it, Ananda, that someone of the white class produces a black state? Here, someone has been reborn in a high family, an affluent Kshatriya family, an affluent Brahmin family, or an affluent householder family. One that is rich with great wealth and property, abundant gold and silver, abundant treasures and commodities, abundant wealth and grain, and he is handsome, attractive, graceful, possessing supreme beauty of complexion. He obtains food, drink, clothing, and vehicles, garlands, skins, and ornaments, bedding, housing, and lighting. He engages in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. In consequence, with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in the plane of misery, in a bad destination in the lower world, in hell. It is in such a way that someone of the white class produces a black state. 5. And how is it, Ananda, that someone of the white class produces a black state? He engages in wholesome conduct by body, speech, and mind. In consequence, with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in a good destination in heavenly world. It is in such a way that someone of the white class produces white state. 6. And how is it, Ananda, that someone of the white class produces enlightenment, which is neither black nor white? Here, having shaved off his hair and beard, he puts on orchi robes and goes forth from the household life into homelessness. When he has thus gone forth, he abandons the 5 hindrances, defilements of the mind, things that weaken wisdom, and then with his mind well established in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, he correctly develops 7 factors of enlightenment and produces enlightenment, which is neither black nor white. It is in such a way that someone of the white class produces enlightenment, which is neither black nor white. These are the 6 classes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leo. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, there was a very strong caste system in place. People thought that whatever family you were born into, that you were destined to a certain life. And here the Buddha is using different colors to represent, the different types of classes in this caste system. Essentially, he's talking about people who are impoverished and disadvantaged beings, and he's talking about people who are more affluent and more wealthy. And what he's helping students to understand, and he's helping the public at large to understand, is that it doesn't matter what you're born into, what family you're born into, that you can actually get to enlightenment no matter what. That's what he's actually describing here. He's describing that, yes, there's some people who are born into disadvantaged families who do unwholesome things, but there's also people who are born into disadvantaged families that are doing wholesome things. And then there's people who are born in disadvantaged families that actually get to enlightenment. But then there's also people who are born into affluent families that do unwholesome things. And there's people that are born into affluent families who do wholesome things. And then there's people who are born into affluent families who actually get to enlightenment. Because it was so deeply entrenched in people's minds that wherever you were born and whatever family you were born into, you were kind of destined for a certain life. If you're born into a disadvantaged family, they thought that you were kind of destined for a terrible life. And if you were born into an affluent family, you were destined for a wonderful life. And the Buddha was essentially teaching with this discourse and many others, where he's saying, hey, it's about your actions, about what determines the outcome of your life. It doesn't matter where you're born and what your upbringing is like, what your social or economic status is in the world. It's all about you cultivating wisdom and overcoming the pollutions of your mind. And then that is what's going to lead to improvements in your day-to-day life. So that's what he's actually teaching here. The individual detail, as you saw, is detailed about describing the types of families and then also describing the type of conduct that one can experience. I don't know that we have to go into all of that, because I think you get the message and you understand what he's describing here, which is anyone can produce enlightenment. It doesn't matter, what family you come from or what background you come from. As we were talking earlier, it doesn't matter your gender, your sex, orientation, your sexual orientation. It doesn't matter how you identify in terms of your gender. It doesn't matter about your race or ethnicity. Anybody and everybody can actually get to enlightenment. Whether you're ordained or whether you're in a household life, you just need the wisdom of how to do it. And that's what the Buddhist teachings are providing you. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So I'll move to the next chapter. It looks like maybe Vibhav would like to read that, or maybe he has a question about something. Go ahead, sir.
I just like to read the chapter.
Okay, I think you like this one, right?
Yeah, I really like this.
We've talked about this before.
Be humble. Now, here, humbleness should be practiced by you. Others will be cruel. We shall not be cruel here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will kill living beings. We shall abstain from killing living beings here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will take what is not given. We shall abstain from taking what is not given here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be uncelibate. We shall be celibate here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will speak falsehood. We shall abstain from false speech here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will speak maliciously. We shall abstain from malicious speech here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will speak harshly. We shall abstain from harsh speech here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will gossip. We shall abstain from gossip here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be craving. We shall not crave here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will have anger. We shall be without anger here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong view, ignorance. We shall be of right view here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong intention. We shall be of right intention here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong speech. We shall be of right speech here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong action. We shall be of right action here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong livelihood. We shall be of right livelihood here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong effort. We shall be of right effort here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong mindfulness. We shall be of right mindfulness here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong concentration. We shall be of right concentration here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong wisdom. We shall be of right wisdom here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be of wrong liberation. We shall be of right liberation here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be overcome by complacency. We shall be free from complacency here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be restless and worried. We shall not be restless and worried here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be doubters. We shall go beyond doubt here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will have ill will. We shall not have ill will here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be revengeful. We shall not be revenged here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be insulting and disrespectful. We shall not be insulting and disrespectful here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be domineering. We shall not be dominating here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be jealous. We shall not be jealous here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be materialistic. We shall not be materialistic here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be dishonorable. We shall not be dishonorable here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be untrustworthy. We shall not be untrustworthy here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be stubborn. We shall not be stubborn here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be arrogant. We shall not be arrogant here. Humbleness should be practiced thus. Others will be difficult to guide. We shall be easy to guide here. Wellness should be practiced thus. Others will have unwholesome friends. We shall have wholesome friends here. Wellness should be practiced thus. Others will be negligent. We shall be diligent here. Wellness should be practiced thus. Others will be without confidence. We shall have confidence here. Wellness should be practiced thus. Others will see no danger of wrongdoing. We shall see the danger of wrongdoing here. Wellness should be practiced thus. Others will be of little learning. We shall be of great learning here. Wellness should be practiced thus. Others will be lazy. We shall be energetic here. Wellness should be practiced thus. Others will be unmindful. We shall be established in mindfulness here. Wellness should be practiced thus. Others will lack wisdom. We shall possess wisdom here. Wellness should be practiced thus. Others will adhere to their own views, hold onto them forcefully, and let go of them with difficulty. We shall not adhere to our own views or hold onto them forcefully, but shall relinquish them easily. Wellness should be practiced thus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So I think that these, by and large, are very, easy to understand and straightforward. The Buddha is very clear in all of his teachings. We can go through a few of these, and then if you guys have questions on any of them, just let me know. I think most of these are all very clear. One of the things that I'll jump down to that you guys don't see very often that I'll help you with is right here. You probably recognize the Eightfold Path, where he's talking about, wrong view, wrong speech, wrong action, so forth and so on. But right here, he gets to wrong wisdom and wrong liberation. This is what's part of the tenfold path. There's the Eightfold Path, which is the guide to enlightenment. That's the core central teaching. That's what's actually going to get you to enlightenment. And there's specific factors that you need to learn and practice in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment using the Eightfold Path. Once you completely purify the mind and you actually attain enlightenment, an enlightened being is practicing the tenfold path. They're not practicing the Eightfold Path. They're practicing the 8 factors, but they're also practicing 2 additional factors. There's nothing to actually teach in terms of how to actually get to right wisdom and right liberation. This is actually a byproduct of having practiced the Eightfold Path. By the time you practice the Eightfold Path and you fully cultivate all the wisdom of the entire path, you will then have right wisdom, meaning that you will have attained final knowledge, that you will fully know the path to enlightenment inside and out, backwards and forwards. That is right wisdom. So there's nothing to teach you there other than all the teachings, right? That's right wisdom, is knowing all the teachings and actually being able to practice them. Then with that wisdom, now you will experience right liberation. Right liberation is where the mind no longer experiences any discontentedness. So the mind is completely liberated. It's free. It no longer has the pollutions. It's been completely purified. So an individual who's enlightened, they are going to be practicing the Eightfold Path. So the tenfold path. They're not going to just be practicing the Eightfold Path. Then there's all these other ones here that the Buddha's talking about, which I think are pretty self-explanatory. But let me just jump down to this one, which is helpful to understand because I've been guiding you guys about this from the very beginning as you learn and practice, is that when you're making your way on the path to enlightenment and you first get on the path to enlightenment, your mind is not enlightened yet. Your mind has anger and sadness and frustration, annoyment, all these other discontent feelings. And the reason why is it's holding on to all kinds of various views, opinions, beliefs about the world. One of the strong beliefs that people have when they first come to the path is that other people are causing you to be angry. Other people are causing you to be frustrated. Well, in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to eliminate your false beliefs, your false views, your false opinions. Because as long as you cling to those things, you'll never be able to bring in the wisdom to be able to see the truth and actually transform your mind. So what the Buddha is saying is that in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to not hold on forcefully to your current views. Because if your mind is experiencing any discontentedness, there's going to be some false views, false opinions, and there's certain beliefs there. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't actually have any beliefs whatsoever because you understand the wisdom of this world. With a belief, you don't know it's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it or you convince yourself to believe it. You don't actually have independently verifiable truth, independently verifiable evidence to show you that this thing is true. you're just believing it. Well, if you hold on to your beliefs and your views, you'll never be able to bring in the wisdom, because as you bring in the wisdom of the Buddha, it's going to conflict with your beliefs, because your beliefs are just that. They're beliefs. They're not truths. So when you're bringing in this wisdom, if you're holding on forcefully to your current views, you're not going to be able to experience enlightenment. So whether it's clinging to a misperception or a misunderstanding or some other thing that you might be clinging to, you're going to need to be willing to relinquish that and let go of it. But you're not bringing in new beliefs to replace your old beliefs. You're bringing in wisdom. And when you see that wisdom is conflicting with your beliefs, that's when you get rid of your beliefs and you realize, oh my goodness, all these years you've been causing your own anger and your own frustration and you didn't even know it. Oh my goodness, look at how true these teachings are. And now you've got that wisdom and you need to be willing to let go and relinquish these false views and these beliefs. So if you have questions on any of these others, just let me know. But those are the ones I think that I needed to explain for this particular discourse, but there could be others that you guys have questions about. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom if you like. I see Vibhav, your hand is up there for some reason. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the views part, but Dennis can go first if she likes.
Okay, I thought I saw her hand go first. I was wondering how it reordered those.
I think because I dropped out. Yeah, well, thank you.
Okay.
My question is with regard to wrong wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand. What does wrong wisdom look like? I just had the idea that wisdom was a good thing.
Yeah, what wrong wisdom would be is a belief or an opinion, a false view. So a wrong wisdom would be what the Buddha refers to as ignorance, or he probably didn't use that word, more like confusion or misunderstanding. So one of the first wrong wisdom or misunderstandings that we need to let go of is that other people are causing us to experience any particular feelings. And through the Four Noble Truths and deeply understanding that, you can independently verify how it's your own mind that's causing that. So any kind of false view, false opinion, misunderstanding, any confusion about the natural laws, this would be wrong wisdom. Another one might be that we have good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or that, a being like God is controlling what we experience in life, or that it's other people that are determining what we experience in life. This would be wrong wisdom, because it's not these things that are actually leading to any results that we experience. It's our own decisions. And we understand this through the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. So there's multiple things that the unenlightened mind is going to believe that we need to be able to see with right wisdom and get to the truth, to understand things like it's unwise to gossip and slander. It's unwise to speak harshly. Things like this. There's so many things like this that you learn on the path. Okay, so it looks like Vibhav, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the views part, because we are establishing right view, and we are saying that in the last part. Sorry. But when he's saying that we have to let go of our views, but in the end we are establishing a view that the path is the right view to establish, right? So we're still adhering to the views in some sense.
What he's saying is that you need to be open, have an open mind. You need to be willing to listen and understand, because if the mind is unenlightened, there's certain things that you're holding in your mind that aren't true. So you need to have this open mind to take in new understanding. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're going to know the truth, but you're not holding to that forcefully, right? Like if somebody comes to you and is like, we should gossip, we should slander. Oh, really? That's what you think? Okay, well, have fun, be well, right? You're not like, no, we shouldn't gossip, we shouldn't slander. That's like holding even a view that is wise. You could hold it forcefully and be attached to it, right? And now you become unskillful when you're talking with people. So the views that he's talking about here are essentially false views, where you're not holding to those, that you're keeping an open mind. And even when you get to the point where you understand right view and you've established that, you're not holding it firmly. So like if you're having a conversation with somebody and they're adamant that other people are causing them to be angry and frustrated. Even though you know the truth, you don't have to sit there and convince them of that, right? That would be holding it forcefully. But instead, you're willing to just be like, oh, really? That's what you think? Would you like to hear another perspective? And they say no. Okay, well, I understand. By the way, how's your mom doing? Right? You just change the subject. You don't have to sit there and convince them of anything at all. So even the views that you have, which are right views and that you're cultivating wisdom, you're not even interested in holding on to that forcefully, but you'll know in your mind that it's true. You just don't have to convince anybody of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. And I don't see any other questions. So we'll go on to chapter 8. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Samantha and Keely. Maybe we'll go to Keely, Samantha, and then maybe you can get the next one since Keely hasn't read yet.
Thank you. The discontentedness of heavenly beings and humans. Monks, heavenly beings and humans seek excitement in forms, have excitement in forms, excite in forms, with the change fading away, and elimination of forms, heavenly beings and humans dwell in discontentedness. In the case of sounds, odors, flavors, physical objects, and mental objects, the discourses are similar to that of forms. But monks, the Tathagata, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, has understood as they really are the cause and the disappearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of forms. He does not seek excitement in forms, does not have excitement in forms, does not excite in forms. With the change fading away and elimination of forms, the Tathagata resides joyful. In the case of sounds, odors, flavors, physical objects, and mental objects, the discourses are similar to that of form. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So here the Buddha is talking about something we were discussing in the previous book, sensual desire, right? So if you guys studied the book, volume number 9, Sensual Desire, then you know what he's talking about here. At least that book is titled The Six Sense Bases, actually. So what he's talking about here is how beings in the heavenly realm and human realm, it also happens in the animal realm as well, but he's just not talking about that here. They will seek excitement. They will essentially be longing, yearning, trying to get those pleasant feelings. In forms, which is things that the eye see, in sounds, which is what the ear hears, in odors, which the nose smells, flavors, which the tongue experiences, physical objects coming in contact with the body, and then mental objects going through the mind, like ideas and thoughts and things like this. So the mind is longing, yearning for permanently agreeable contact. And if it gets what it wants, it gets excited, it gets happy, it gets thrilled and euphoria. But what the Buddha is saying is, with the change and fading away of those things, then these beings are going to end up in discontentedness. They're already discontent when they're experiencing excitement. That's discontentedness too. But here, they're going to experience the painful side of this. They're going to experience the sadness, the anger, the frustration. Because if you get so excited when you get a brand new car, or when you get a car accident and it's crushed, you'll be angry and frustrated. If you get so excited when you get a brand new raise at work and you get more money, well, when your company comes to you and says that they're downsizing and they need to lower your salary, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. If you get so excited when you get that new boyfriend or girlfriend, when you guys break up, you'll be sad and frustrated. There's all these different things that you'll experience that you need to understand how to not get conditional excitement. But instead, you need to learn how to enjoy the experiences that you're having without conditional pleasant feelings. And this is what the path needs to be developed in order for the mind to be able to do this. Because just hearing that, like, people are usually like, it confuses them. It's like, how can I enjoy something without conditional pleasant feelings? Because their mind doesn't know how to do that. Because that's essentially what the unenlightened mind is doing, is it's seeking excitement in these cravings, desires, attachments, and it's chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. So you're going to need to learn how to restrain the mind, pull it back, not crave and long and yearn. And as you're doing that more and more, you're going to get to this point where your mind's more and more in the middle, and you'll learn how to enjoy something without a conditioned feeling. You'll notice that your mind's completely stable and completely steady, but you'll fully enjoy what it is that you're doing. And you need to experience it in order to really understand what I'm talking about. So if you're practicing the Eightfold Path and you're practicing all the teachings and you're restraining your mind, at some point you're going to experience that. And you may have already, right? Like even before even getting on this path, if you've ever been sitting on a bench, looking at a view, for example, or looking at something, you're like, you know what? I could just sit here all day and I don't need anything. I could just sit right here on this bench, right? And I could just be completely content here. I don't need anything at all. I'm just completely at peace. And that might have lasted for a few seconds or a few minutes, but then your mind was like, oh, I want to go here and I want to go there. Or somebody was like, hey, we got to get in the car and leave. And you're like, oh, I don't want to leave, right? The mind was holding on to something. So if you've ever just even had a little glimpse or a little glimmer of, oh my goodness, I could just sit here and be at peace for the rest of the day. I don't need to do anything at all. That's what it means to just enjoy something without actually having these external things that require you to get these conditioned pleasant feelings. So the Buddha's here saying that beings in the human realm and heavenly realm experience that. But what he does in one of his teaching methods is, if you know that he's enlightened and you have confidence that he's enlightened, then he's explaining what he does and what he experiences. Because the more he explains what the enlightened mind is, then you will understand how to get to that enlightened mind. So he understands as it really is the cause and disappearance. We talked about this in the last book. The cause is craving, desire, attachment, sensual desire. That's the cause of discontentedness. The disappearance is understanding the universal truth of impermanence, that all these things that the mind is craving and longing, yearning for, they're going to disappear. That the mind understands gratification, that it's chasing after this permanently agreeable contact, that it wants pleasant feelings. The danger in that is that if you allow the mind to get the pleasant feelings, it's only a matter of time before you get the painful ones. Because if you get so excited when your bank account balance is up here, when it goes down here, which it will because of impermanence, then you're going to be sad. Or if you get so excited when it's sunny outside, the danger in that gratification is that when the sun's gone, you're going to experience the painful feelings. So you need to be able to understand the gratification that the mind's chasing these pleasant feelings, wanting things to be a certain way. And now the danger in that is there's going to be painful feelings. Even if you get what you want and you get those temporary pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting right around the corner. That's the danger. And the escape from all of this is the Eightfold Path. That's what's going to train your mind to get away from that. And what the Buddha is saying is, when things are changing, when forms, sounds, odors, flavors, physical objects, mental objects are changing, he's joyful. He maintains his joy, right? Because he understands impermanence and his mind's not holding on to anything. If your mind's holding on, then when things start changing and you're craving that permanence, you're not going to like that, and you're not going to be able to maintain your joy. So you would like to be able to maintain your joy, whether it's sunny outside or if it's raining, or if your bank account balance is up here, or if it's down here, you would like to be able to maintain your joy. Whether people are talking fondly of you and lovingly and gracious, or people are being bitter and harsh and hostile and hateful, you would like to be able to maintain your joy through any of these situations. And that's through training your mind to not have craving, desire, attachment, and understand impermanence. So let me know what questions you guys have here. Looks like Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I actually had a question about how, my understanding was the heavenly beings generally have, mostly having pleasant feelings. So I understand that's the discontentedness of pleasant feelings. So, and in that case, how do they experience any painful feelings? Because they're mostly feeling pleasant feelings, right? This question makes sense.
Yeah, the heavenly beings don't experience painful feelings at all. They only experience pleasant feelings. And that's why they tend to be complacent, and they don't have that built-in motivation to be able to make their way to enlightenment, because they're not experiencing the painful feelings, nor the neither painful nor pleasant. It's only happy, excited, thrill, euphoria. And it's an elongated period of time. So typically those beings don't get to enlightenment, even though they can.
Okay, so in this case, so the human beings, basically, this is all three kinds of feelings. Could be discontentedness is all three.
Yeah.
Pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant.
Yeah.
But for heavenly beings is basically all pleasant feelings.
Exactly.
Discontentedness.
Exactly. Which is still discontentedness, because the mind's shaken up and unsteady and unstable.
Okay. And when as and when they if they do not get to enlightenment while they're in heaven, they would go, because of all the discontentedness, they would come back to some realm, and possibly human realm, because will their discontentedness be like strong enough for them to like go down to like hell, from heaven to hell, or animal or afflicted spirits, or potentially mostly they would probably come down to human realm?
They can be reborn down into the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirits, the human realm, or back into the heavenly realm. All these beings in all these different realms can move from one realm to the other. You can actually move from hell into heaven. It's very rare. The Buddha talks about it. It's extremely rare, but it can happen. So it's not like it's a sequence that you have to go through, that you can actually be reborn in and out of any of these realms. Once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, though, whether it's in this realm or in the heavenly realm, you will never go down into the lower realms of hell, animal, or afflicted spirits. But if you haven't gotten to that point in any particular life, you can be reborn in and out of any of the realms at any time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to check Facebook and YouTube here, and I don't see anything there. So, Samantha, looks like you're up for the next one. Oops. Chapter 9.
Thank you. Discontentedness because of the six sense bases. Monks, heavenly beings, and humans seek excitement in forms, sounds, odors, flavors, physical objects, mental objects. Have excitement in forms, sounds, odors, flavors, physical objects, mental objects. Excite in forms, sounds, odors, flavors, physical objects, mental objects. With the change, fading away, and elimination of forms, sounds, odors, flavors, physical objects, mental objects, heavenly beings and humans dwell in discontentedness.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So this was very similar to the last one. It just didn't have all the other pieces that the last one had. So I don't know that we need to talk about this any further, but if anybody has any questions, just let me know, and I'll check to see if we have any. Okay, I don't see any. Okay, so now we'll go to chapter 10. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Yihang, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. Consideration to go forth into homelessness. Monks, before my enlightenment, while I was still unawakened, not yet fully enlightened, I too, being myself subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement, thought what was also subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement. I thought what was also subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement. And what may be said to be subject birth, to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement. Wife and children are subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement. Men and women, slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses, and mares. Gold and silver are subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement. These objects of attachment are subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement, and one who is tied to these things, obsessed with them, and entirely craving them, being himself subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement, seeks what is also subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement. Then I considered thus, why, being myself subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement, do I seek what is also subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement? Suppose that, being myself subject to birth, aging, sickness, death,
sorrow, and defilement. Having understood the danger in what is subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement, I seek the unborn, unaging, unailing, deathless enlightenment, sorrowless, and undefiled springs, security from bondage, nibbana, enlightenment. Later, while still young, a black-haired young man endowed with youthfulness in the prime of life, though my mother and father wished otherwise, and wept with tearful faces, I shaved off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and went forth from the home life into homelessness. Here, Bhagala Devaya, before my enlightenment, while I was still unawakened, not yet fully enlightened, I considered thus: household life is crowded and dusty. Life gone forth is wide open. It is not easy while living in a home to lead the holy life entirely perfect and pure as a polished shell. Suppose I shave off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and go forth from the home life into homelessness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So what the Buddha is talking about here is that before he got to enlightenment, that he was subject to impermanence and all this birth, aging, sickness, death. He was still subject to impermanence after he got to enlightenment too, but his mind was just unaffected by it. But initially, before he got to enlightenment, he was heavily affected because he had these defilements, right? And then he was seeking out also things that were impermanent. He's using this birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement, but what he's essentially talking about is things that are impermanent, that his mind was longing, yearning for things that were impermanent. And then he gave some examples of things that are impermanent, like wife and children. They had slaves during that period of time, goats, sheep, fowl, pigs, all these different things, all these animals that they would have used on farms, gold and silver, which was the currency at the time. All of these things are impermanent. Doesn't mean you can't have these things. Of course, today we wouldn't have slaves. That's not something we would have. But there's certain things that you will have as part of your life that you will not be tied to, but you'll still be able to get to enlightenment. So you're still going to have money. You're still going to have a house. You still might have a car and all these different things. You'll have clothing and mobile phone and computer, all these things, but you need to learn how to make sure you're not tied to them. You're not obsessed with them. Your mind is not clinging to them. So the attachment or the craving isn't the object itself. It's the way that the mind longs and yearns for it. So that's why the Buddha says here about being obsessed with them. Right? He's not saying that you need to eliminate these things, although, someone who's enlightened wouldn't have slaves. They're most likely not going to have these animals either, because that's essentially what we're doing with animals is enslaving them, right? But an individual could have wife and children or husband or whatever, a partner. These are all things that we might have as part of our journey to enlightenment, but we won't be attached to them. Our mind will be completely peaceful and joyful, even though we're in relationships. Sometimes people think that you have to get enlightened. And that's where people read things like this and they look at it in isolation and they don't understand the Buddha's teachings in totality. And they will think that, the Buddha is guiding everybody to get to enlightenment through becoming ordained. And that's just by looking at this one particular discourse in isolation. Because yes, during his lifetime, it's reasonable to understand that he was describing household life as crowded and dusty because of the reasons that I was talking about earlier, that there was countless tasks just to be able to sustain your life. And that those countless tasks took a lot of work and a lot of effort, and it didn't give much time for learning the teachings and practicing things like meditation. So it's understandable that he would call it crowded and dusty. And then he says, okay, he's describing for himself how he went into homelessness. And that's what he did, is he left the home, and that's how he was able to get to enlightenment. Well, sometimes people are moving from other traditions, like particularly maybe like Christianity, into the teachings of the Buddha. And in Christianity, people are taught to live their life according to Jesus and mimic Jesus's life. And sometimes when people are coming into the teachings of the Buddha, they think it's the same thing, that they're supposed to mimic the life of the Buddha. Well, what you would like to mimic is his condition of his mind and the way that his mind was purified. That's what you're looking to be able to develop. But in terms of his lifestyle, wearing a robe, cutting off his hair, living a life of homelessness, you can do that. And that is one option for an individual to be able to get to enlightenment that way. But it's not the only option. You can actually make your way to enlightenment from the household life as well. So when you see discourses like this, it's important not to look at it in isolation and understand the totality of all the teachings of the Buddha. And here he's describing what existed during his lifetime and what he did. And he's not telling you that you have to absolutely mimic that lifestyle, but it's just one option for people that they can actually use in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. This is volume 10, chapter 10. Looks like Vibhav, you have a question?
David, I was wondering if you have any insight into why he chose yellow or like orange, like not any other color. I don't know, why not green or red or something?
Sure. The herbs that they used in order to dye the robes make this kind of like burnt orange color. So they use things like jackfruit and different things like this. I've been to a place before that actually they kind of had the recipe from what they did 2,500 years ago to turn the robes that particular color. And they were showing us how they do it. And it was like all these different kind of brown and yellow herbs that kind of came out with this kind of orangish color. And that's what it kind of ultimately comes out to. But they had to actually boil it multiple times. It took them like 6 months to a year because they showed the different stages of the fabric and they showed it kind of like getting closer and closer to what the Buddha actually used. So it was because of the herbs that they used that turned it that particular color. And I can imagine them sitting around in parks and in dirt and stuff like that. It made sense to have it that color because then it wouldn't stain. Where maybe some other colors, like if it was like a bright yellow or a white or something like that, it would have stained, where this orangish color, kind of holds its color and it doesn't really show stains very easily.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to see if we have any other questions anywhere, and I don't see any. So what I'm going to do then is just end by thanking all of you guys for joining class. Thank you for everyone who read. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. Next week, we're going to be in the next 10 chapters. So if you'd like to read ahead, you're more than welcome to, because by reading the chapters of the words of the Buddha and reading the words that I share, you're going to be more fully informed. And then you might actually have specific questions. So sometimes people might read before or after class, or you might read before and after. So if you'd like to do that, you can get access to these books in all those different ways, either on our website, you can print it yourself, you can get printed versions on Amazon, or you can get them at the temple. Tomorrow in our group learning program, I'm going to be in volume 1. I'm going to be covering the frequently asked questions section. It's the very end of the book, towards the end, where there's 11 frequently asked questions that students will tend to ask. And I'm going to be covering all of those 11 questions, helping students to understand those and the replies to those, not just the questions, but the answers as well. And then we've got a couple more classes in the group learning program. And then we're going to be restarting it all the way from the beginning on June 1st. So if you'd like to restart that program, or you know anybody else that would like to restart it or actually start from the very beginning, that would be an ideal time to do that. You can really join that program at any point, just like this program, but it's kind of nice to start it from the beginning. So June 1st, which is a Sunday, we're going to be starting from the very beginning of volume 1, and we're going to be going chapter by chapter each Sunday with about 4 or 5 weeks of kind of preliminary information to get people kind of off and running with the teachings of the Buddha and kind of really soaked into what he actually taught. But then we're going to start chapter 1 somewhere around like the 5th or 6th week. But the preliminary work that we're going to be doing and the content that I'm going to be sharing is going to kind of help people get an overview of what the path to enlightenment is in those number of the first kind of 4 or 5 weeks of the program. And then, of course, on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students and opening up to any and all questions that you guys have. So thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for everything you do to learn and practice these teachings for your own life. And if there's anything that I can do to help you, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help you. And we'll see you perhaps in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee krap.
you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.